Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. A while back we took a look at the entire series of duels fought between Anakin Skywalker and Count Dooku. Their encounters throughout the Clone Wars were a great benchmark for Anakin's progression as a lightsaber duelist. We watch Anakin evolve from a young Padawan, brash, reckless, and faceful as Sith lightning to an elite Jedi capable of holding his own against the best duelist in the galaxy. Today we'll be breaking down the evolution of Maul versus Obi Wan Kenobi. As a youngling, Obi-Wan was strong-spirited and a bit mischievous. He was a tinkerer and loved fast speeders and piloting starships, and, to be honest, didn't seem all that different from a young Anakin Skywalker. But Obi-Wan, like most of us, experienced some great change as he grew older. In his case, he got stuck inside of a tiny ship that was flying through the corridors of a larger ship. Needless to say, it was terrifying for Obi-Wan, and his love for flying ended there. The second thing that changed him was his master, Qui-Gon Jinn, one of the most unorthodox masters in the Jedi Order. He was constantly challenging the Jedi Council and requesting that they pursue alternative views of the Force. Obi-Wan actually became more stable and mature due to his master's own more unorthodox behavior. He would even oftentimes critique Qui-Gon Jinn when he did something against the Council's wishes. Of course, Obi-Wan still loved and respected his master, and he learned a very important lesson from him, and that was there was nobility in restraint. This is perhaps why Obi-Wan prefers Form 3 lightsaber combat above all else. It's one of the more simple forms of lightsaber combat, and it's primarily designed for defensive purposes. A master in Form 3 can usually take on multiple gunmen and swordsmen at the same time and still be able to hold their ground. This was in contrast to the acrobatic Form 4 known as Ataru used by Qui-Gon Jinn. It featured much more aggressive offensive attacks. Maul was born on Dathomir to the very powerful Mother Talzin. Mother Talzin was the matriarch in charge of the Night Sister faction that ruled over the planet. Palpatine had encountered Talzin pretty early on in his own journey, and together they trained in the Force and shared methods and techniques. Now, Talzin had been under the impression that Palpatine was going to take her on as an apprentice, but that didn't happen. Instead, Palpatine steals Darth Maul away from her and trains him in complete secrecy and isolation. At the time, Sidious still had his own master, Plagueis, and they kind of had agreed to this rule of two-like situation, which means no secret apprentices. But instead, Palpatine steals Darth Maul away from her and trains him, and so Maul's childhood was devoid of interaction aside from a droid that trained him into a killing machine. Maul was skilled in all forms of lightsaber combat but preferred to use a double-bladed lightsaber while utilizing Form 7, Juyo, the same style that Palpatine preferred. Form 7 is one of the most dangerous forms of lightsaber combat and relies on a massive amount of energy and emotion to power the user's movements and strikes. Juyo practitioners were extremely unpredictable and chaotic, which made them extremely hard to fend off. Their attacks were usually relentless and bold, keeping even the most skilled swordsmen off balance. Juyo was primarily considered a dark side lightsaber form because the users usually channeled the dark side of the Force. During the Naboo blockade, Darth Sidious would send Darth Maul to capture Queen Padme Amidala in order to force the monarch into signing over her planet to the Trade Federation. It was actually also Darth Sidious's homeworld, but I guess he didn't have a great childhood there. Obi Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn have been assigned as mediators between the Naboo and Trade Federation and were forced into protection duty once they realized the Trade Federation was carrying out an illegal occupation of the planet. The Jedi managed to grab Queen Amidala and escape to Tatooine. Right before they leave the desert planet, Maul catches up to them, and Qui-Gon Jinn has a brief duel with him. The appearance of Darth Maul terrified the Jedi Order. They believed the Sith to be extinct. This phantom menace was a sign that there was some greater evil lurking in the shadows. Maul eventually encounters the Jedi again when Loyalist forces try to retake Naboo from the Trade Federation. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan square up against Darth Maul at the Royal Theed Palace. Qui-Gon was considered one of the more talented duelists in the Jedi Order, and his Padawan was considered an up-and-coming Jedi as well. They had numbers on their side, and immediately they try to outflank Maul and find a hole in his defenses, but Darth Maul's saber staff is well equipped for fighting off multiple enemies. On top of that, despite their mutual respect, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn were having some problems of their own. You see, Qui-Gon Jinn was doubting his own capabilities as a master, and there was the possibility that he and Obi-Wan would separate. And so they seem kinda out of sync during this first fight, and Darth Maul does a good job at constantly trying to separate the two Jedi so that he can defeat them one-on-one. Remember, the Juyo form leaves the user vulnerable to enemy attack, and it's best used one-on-one. Darth Maul eventually leads the pair into one of the main reactor rooms. Obi-Wan is cut off from Qui-Gon, and in the confined spaces of this room, the larger and older Jedi, relying on the energy-intensive Ataru form, has trouble keeping up with Darth Maul. Darth Maul, sensing his opponent's weakness, feints and stuns Qui-Gon Jinn with the pommel of his saber, and then ends it with a clean backhand thrust right through Qui-Gon's gut. Obi-Wan, who is trapped behind a force field gate, watches in horror as his master falls. Now, at this point in time, Darth Maul is flowing with the dark side of the Force, along with a newfound confidence. Although his master had trained him to be one of the deadliest Sith warriors in the entire galaxy, he had yet to really challenge himself until dueling this Jedi Master. Now that he had killed Qui-Gon Jinn, his Padawan Obi Wan Kenobi doesn't really seem to stand a chance, but instead of being calm and collected, Obi-Wan is full of rage. When the force field shifts, Obi-Wan immediately goes on the attack using Form 4 Ataru, but in a more conservative manner, more fit for an indoor battle. At the same time, Obi-Wan's Form 3 defenses are flawless, and his parries are timed perfectly, throwing Maul on the defensive immediately. Obi-Wan never gives Maul a second to breathe or bask in the glory of his victory, and before Maul realizes what's going on, Obi-Wan has cut his saber staff right in half. This finally gives the two a moment to separate as Maul finally refocuses his attention on this very serious Padawan. He manages to use the Force to push Obi-Wan into the reactor shaft. The battle seems over, and Darth Maul once again relaxes. But Obi-Wan takes advantage of this situation, flips over Maul, grabs Qui-Gon's lightsaber, and slices the Sith warrior in half. Obi Wan Kenobi would be awarded knighthood for his defeat of Darth Maul. He would spend the next decade focused on training Anakin. He had promised his dying master he would do so. Qui-Gon believed that Anakin was the chosen one. Everyone thought Maul was dead. Usually that's what happens to a person who gets cut in half. Luckily for Maul though, he had been cut in half by a lightsaber and his wound was immediately cauterized. Using all of his hate and some Force powers, he manages to survive the trip to the bottom of the reactor shaft and falls into a large reservoir of cooling water. His broken body was taken inside of a container of garbage and dumped on the trash planet of a Lothal miner. Maul awoke and somehow managed to attach himself to a cybernetic spider body, and he basically chills on this garbage planet, slowly losing his mind for 12 years. That's when his brother Savage Opress finds him. Darth Maul now is only known as Maul. He's failed his master and no longer a Sith. With the help of Mother Talzin, Savage manages to heal Maul's mind and also gives him some more human-like robot legs. When Maul finally awakes again, he only has one thing on his mind, and that is revenge against his hated enemy, Obi Wan Kenobi. The Jedi Master had taken a very bright future from it, or at least what he thought would have been a bright future, at the side of Palpatine. Maul and Savage Opress decided to draw Obi Wan Kenobi out by carrying out a massacre of a small village on the planet of Raydonia and then sending a holovid straight to the Jedi Order. The Jedi were in the middle of the Clone Wars, so Obi-Wan decides to go to the small village by himself. He finds a completely abandoned village full of dead bodies and destroyed buildings. He's skeptical that he'll find the real Maul. He believes he's dealing with an impersonator, but he's surprised to find his old adversary still alive and kicking. Apparently the only thing that's kept Maul alive up till this point was his hatred for Kenobi. But the second Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber and takes on Form 3 stance, Savage Opress comes out of nowhere and attacks him from behind. Now Obi-Wan is outnumbered 2-1. Savage Opress is all about brute strength. When Obi-Wan fights very strong opponents, he seems to have problems, especially when he plays into their hand by going strength versus strength. Surprised and unprepared and distracted, Obi-Wan is disarmed pretty quickly and captured. The brothers take the Jedi Master onto their ship where they sort of throw him around and beat him up a bit. But before they can take off the planet, another former Sith assassin by the name of Saj Ventress boards their ship. She had been betrayed by Count Dooku and was now working as a bounty hunter. Her target was her former apprentice, Savage Opress. She rescues Kenobi, arms him with one of her red lightsabers, and a very strange 2-on-2 lightsaber fight ensues. Asajj is quite a fast fighter. She utilizes her old master Dooku's Form 2 Makasi. Also built for dueling, Makasi emphasizes efficient and quick movements, using counterattacks and parries to throw opponents off balance with precision strikes. While Savage and Asajj chase each other around, Obi-Wan goes toe-to-toe with Maul up in the rafters above. Now, Maul seems a bit unbalanced by his new metal legs, but the viciousness of his attacks throw Obi-Wan off balance as well. While locking blades, Maul starts taunting Obi-Wan about the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, and as Obi-Wan becomes more angry, he abandons his defensive Form 3 style and goes on a sloppy offensive. Obi-Wan realizes that he and Ventress are a bit outmatched, and they better save themselves so they can fight another day. The next time Obi-Wan encounters Maul, it's on the world of Florum, home of the pirate gang led by Hondo Ohnaka. Maul and Savage have been collecting resources and robbing banks. Their idea was to start a criminal organization. On Florum, the two Zabraks hope to recruit several of Hondo's pirates and manages to start a mutiny. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan had been tracking the two brothers along with Adi Gallia, another member of the Jedi Council. They arrive just in time to help out Hondo Ohnaka fight off all of these mutinied pirates. Maul immediately engages Obi-Wan again, and in the open space, without surprises, the two are evenly matched. Obi-Wan once again falls back to Form 3 while Maul presses on the attack. Adi Gallia, on the other hand, is struggling to keep up with the brute force of Savage Opress. One can only absorb so many parries against the large Zabrak, and Adi Gallia is running out of energy and moves. Savage manages to stun the smaller Jedi and spears her right through. Obi-Wan is once again double-teamed and is forced to withdraw with Hondo Ohnaka's forces into their pirate base. In order to defeat these two Zabraks, Obi-Wan also collects Adi's lightsaber so he can dual wield. Obi-Wan usually doesn't go dual wielding, but a capable swordsman with two sabers or a saber staff who is proficient in Form 3 can usually create an impenetrable defense. Obi-Wan doesn't disappoint. With two blades facing the brothers, he's able to control the space around him and not allow the brothers to overwhelm him. He uses Form 3 mostly to keep them at distance, along with some newly learned martial arts moves to keep Savage Opress off balance. Obi-Wan clearly has learned some new strategies for dealing with the brute, and they all seem to be below the waist. But Savage manages to catch Obi-Wan off guard with a force maneuver and finally topples him. Obi-Wan finds himself locking blades with both brothers again, but the martial arts training comes in handy and he attacks Savage's knees and buckles him. This breaks Savage's lock and Obi-Wan slices the large brute's arm off. Maul surprisingly shows care for his brother and immediately pushes Obi-Wan out of the way, ending the engagement and protecting his brother. The duel on Florum would be the last time Obi-Wan and Maul cross blades during the Clone Wars, but it's definitely not the last time they would see each other during the Clone Wars. You see, Maul eventually manages to build that criminal enterprise he and his brother dreamed of, and together they took over the planet of Mandalore, which happened to be ruled by Duchess Satine. This was Obi-Wan's first and only true love. By capturing Satine, Maul lures Obi-Wan to Mandalore and murders her right in front of his eyes. It's one of the most painful moments in Obi-Wan's life, but the reality was Maul had freed him from his one last attachment in life. The loss of Satine perhaps grounded Obi-Wan in a way that allowed him to be a better Jedi and survive his exile on Tatooine. His job was to protect Luke Skywalker, the son of Anakin and Padme Amidala, who he now believed was the Chosen One. Maul was forced to leave Mandalore after the Republic took it back. He would start another criminal organization known as the Crimson Dawn, but pretty much by this point, he'd become a broken man. The only thing that really drives him still is his pursuit of Obi-Wan. Maul finally manages to track down Obi-Wan to Tatooine, and after many days of walking through the desert, finds him sitting aside a campfire in the middle of the night. Maul is tired. He appears haggard and weak, but he once again starts his old routine and begins taunting his old adversary. Obi-Wan by now has ascended to a new level in the Force and has found an inner peace after so many years in exile. But when Maul figures out that Obi-Wan must be here to protect something or someone, the old Jedi Master is forced to draw his blade. He assumes the Form 3 defensive stance and then shifts to Form 4 Ataru, the same form that got his master killed all those years ago. Maul recognizes this and immediately leaps into action. He strikes Obi-Wan with the same pommel attack that he had once used on Qui-Gon. But this time, Obi-Wan is ready, parries, and slices right through Maul's saber staff and through his chest, mortally wounding him. With his dying breath, Maul asks Obi-Wan whether the child he's protecting is the Chosen One. When Obi-Wan replies he believes he is, Maul states that he will avenge them all. Now, Maul seems obsessed with getting revenge from Obi-Wan Kenobi, and at least in the early years, that's all he really thought about. But as the years went on, as he became more mature and wiser, he started realizing his one true enemy was never Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was Palpatine. It's Palpatine who ripped him away from his mother at such a young age. It's Palpatine who basically tortured him and trained him into this weapon, and then discarded him the second he makes one mistake. At the end of the day, Maul realizes Obi-Wan and him are kindred spirits in a way. They've both been screwed over by the Sith. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.